After his 2012 surprise hit End of Watch, David Ayer comes back 2 years later with a bigger budget for Sabotage. Not that Sabotage, this Sabotage, with Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Breacher, the leader of a DEA task force team who is sent to infiltrate a safe house, where along the way they decide they're going to steal $10 million and hide it away for later and then divide the money amongst themselves. But when they come back for it, it's gone. After this, each member of the team is being eliminated one by one, and all of the members of the team start to look at each other as they try to figure out who is behind everything and why. Now, this whole team is made up of several different well-known actors, including Josh Holloway, Sam Worthington, Terrence Howard, a couple lesser-known names to me like Murray Enos and Olivia Williams. But then, of course, you have your Arnold Schwarzenegger character, who is probably one of the better Arnold Schwarzenegger performances since his return to acting, which is really good to see. Although he may have been able to do more if things had turned out a different way, but we'll come back to that later. The group really comes together well, coming across as a team of people who are not necessarily good people, but they're likable characters and they're interesting to watch. You have some that don't do a whole lot, like Joe Manganiello and Josh Holloway, who I enjoyed for what they did, but they didn't get a whole lot to do. And you got Terrence Howard, and I couldn't tell you why he's in it. I don't know why they went to get such a high-caliber actor who had to have been expensive and just barely gave him anything to do. He's got probably the least lines out of everybody except one, maybe. Most of the characters' parts are pretty short, save a few. For example, we have Olivia Williams, who is playing the detective who is assigned to figure out who stole the money and who's behind all of the corruption. And obviously, now that there's a bunch of killings going on, she's there to try to figure out what's going on with that as well. And she starts off the movie as kind of like the secondary character, but then further in, it starts to kind of move her as more of the main character. And when she was as a secondary character, I thought she was a great secondary character. As she kind of moved towards the more primary focus, I thought she was good, which obviously is nothing wrong with that. But I felt like they should have just kept her as kind of secondary. And you have Sam Worthington, who I enjoyed having there. I understand that not a lot of people are big Sam Worthington fans, but I like Sam Worthington, and I enjoy getting a performance out of him any chance I get, and I thought he did just fine in this one. Another one that gets a decent amount of screen time is Murray Enos, who plays the coked-out person of the group. She's just kind of out there. She's lost her marbles, it seems, and just getting worse. So her performance is a bit out there, like the character. At times, I felt that she was really good as just kind of the manic, crazy, drugged-out person in the group. Other times, I felt like she did go kind of over the top, and some of the things she did was a bit unnecessary. Speaking of which, this movie is directed by David Ayer, who I think is a very talented and has a very specific style to him. And one of the things he likes to do is jump cuts. Jump cuts are okay. They're cool. They add a little bit of flair to it. It's a bit different than most movies that you'd see. But sometimes he does them in the oddest places that just don't make any sense. For example, there's a spot where Breacher goes to close the car door, and it cuts from just after the door starts to close and straight to where the door is about to close. And it's kind of just unnecessary. Sure, it speeds it up about a half a second, but I don't think it needed that. And that kind of stuff just kind of takes me out of it in certain moments. So I could have gone without that. I mean, there's plenty of times where it works, and it actually does add style to it and everything. But some of the time, it needed to be toned back a little bit. But of course, you do have a David Ayer, who, as I said, is a very talented director and writer. And there's some scenes that I did really like, specifically one where Breacher and Olivia Williams' character, I forget the character's name, they are headed to the place where one of the team members is that Breacher suspects is being targeted next. And along the way, you kind of bounce back and forth between what's going on with them and what's going on with the guy who is being attacked. And they both have a good amount of tension to them that just kind of slowly builds. And like I say, it cuts back and forth, and it's a good example of how to take two different things happening and go back and forth with it without being confusing or kind of taking you out of it or making you go, well, I wanted to know what happened in that one. Go away from this one. I don't care about this one. I felt like they were both really tense, and they both built up and came together as a whole scene, really building up to something, and there was a lot of tension, and there was a great release at the end. I think this was really the scene that worked out the way it was supposed to, and I felt like if the rest of the movie had this kind of focus, and that he was able to do with the rest of it what he did with this scene, it would have worked out really well. But obviously that's not how it happened. Of course, there were some issues with the studio. From what I read, he had a script that he wanted, and he had directed it the way he wanted. He shot everything. He had it edited. It was pretty much done. It was about a 3-hour-long movie focusing a lot on the mystery of everything that was happening and really getting deeper into the character of Breacher, and a lot of things I wish would have been there. But the studio decided they wanted to go a different direction. They went ahead and cut it about in half. It was supposed to be 3 hours. They wanted it about an hour and a half long with a higher percentage of action. And so they cut it to death and mashed it all together. And they asked for a different ending. Now, of course, the ending is an interesting scene where this is probably another one of my favorite scenes. It's a great action scene for Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's about the only thing that fits what the studio is going for, it seems like to me. It works really well as kind of that action movie thing that's not going for anything too deep, but it's like a really satisfying payoff. But it's, like I say, it's the only thing that fit what they were going for. Everything else was going for a deeper, longer type of story that was more involved, but then it wasn't allowed to play out. It was all cut up and mashed together. So it seemed to me like it had potential to be great, but in the end it was just an average action movie. I do think the reviews were a little bit harsh. It was getting some lower reviews than I think it needed. It's not great. It's kind of mediocre, but it's still worth watching, I think, if you're okay with a mediocre, just kind of average, decent action movie. And there are some things to get out of it for sure. Like I said, this is one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's best performances since he has returned to acting, and there's some fun with Mireille Enos's coked out character. There's plenty of David Ayer style in it, and like I said, there is some tension in some scenes that actually does work pretty well, and there's the end scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger that's a really good action scene. So it is like a light recommend. If you're okay with a mediocre movie, just don't expect too much going into it. And those are my thoughts on Sabotage. If you liked the video, hit the like button to let me know. If you have any other movies you'd like me to review, leave a comment down in the comment section below. If you want to be informed anytime I have a video uploaded, hit the subscribe button down there. And with that said, I want to thank you for hanging out with me for a little while, and I hope to see you again soon, talking movies.